That concludes my statement.
Well, thank you. And as you know, there are many of us who live in the Great Lakes region who serve on this committee. But Mr. Joyce and I recognize the importance because of the importance we place on our regional geographic watershed quality improvements that we recognize the others around the United States, right, Mr. Joyce? We strive to be fair. My first question, I'm going to expand a little bit on my opening remarks. The UN report also stated, and I quote from that, "The health of the ecosystems on which we all and other species depend upon is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, livelihoods, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide. Around 1 million animals and plant species are now threatened with extinction, many within decades, many more than ever before in human history." So, Mr. Secretary, like the fourth National Climate Assessment, this information is very sobering, and I believe it's a call for action. So with the release of this information, will the Department of Interior take a pause in its approach to energy development to re-examine the impacts of these operations on ecosystems, species, and habitats to see if there are better approaches? The report, and I'll just kind of bundle two other things together for you so you can respond in total. The report also states that the abundance of native species in most major land-based habitats has declined by 20%. And so I want to know how the department's going to work to sustain native plants on public lands, and I think you touched on it a little bit about the challenges we have with wild burros and horses. But the last thing that I'll mention that the report highlights is the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on nature, with those impacts projected to increase over the coming decades. So I believe, and I believe many Americans would agree with me, that we can't continue business as usual approach. So how's the department going to incorporate this science into your everyday operations and long-range planning? In other words, what are you doing to make sure that the United States is a leader and not a contributor in the eroding the foundations of our economies, our livelihood, and the health and quality of life, not only here in America, but worldwide?
So I appreciate that question. I'll give you my perspective on this. And before doing so, I'll give you a couple facts about me. I recognize that climate is changing. I recognize that man is a contributing factor. And I've spent a good amount of time with our scientists trying to figure out how the best practices we can utilize to factor their understanding of science as it stands into making informed legal and policy decisions. And I've spent a good amount of time with the fourth assessment, and if you look at that report, you don't have to read far, you can just read into the overview, and you will see that even they recognize that the largest uncertainty in projecting future climate conditions is the level of GHG going forward. And that really is because those future levels depend on a variety of factors: economic, political, technological, and demographic. And those are difficult to predict. So what our scientists tell us is that the best practice is to recognize that there is no one right model or right foreseen scenario, that all are plausible future states. And the best thing we can do in making an informed decision is to look at multiple models, multiple scenarios with representative concentration pathways. The standard, 4, 2.6, 4.5, 6, 8.5, they say don't just pick one. There is, it is very important for what we do legally and for ensuring that things are upheld in the courts, that we recognize what the science is and articulate a rational basis for it. If we can't articulate a rational basis, our decisions won't be sustained. Now, that's the first part of your question. The second part is, are we going to stop oil and gas development because of this report? And the answer to that is no. Congress, you all, have the ability to decide whether we do anything on federal lands. And you've decided, the lands that we manage, you've decided a whole host of different range of things. On some things, you've decided that it's wilderness and should be enjoyed for the solitude and enjoyment of the people and untrammeled by man. On other things, you've decided that this is a national park and it should be managed that way. And on other areas, you've decided that the land is for multiple use. We go through a planning process. That planning process can result in some areas that are for solitude, other areas are for multiple use. But at the end of the day, we also have the Mineral Leasing Act. And if you have a view on what you want to happen, we'll carry it out when you execute it. And that is my position.
Well, thank you. The UN report is a lot more than just on climate change. It's also about pollution, mining, and land use. And so I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair, and I think my committee members know that I usually don't even go first. So I'm gonna follow this up because I think this kind of leads into my second question. And it's about something that you and I have just discussed before, and the committee knows probably where I'm going with this. As I'm deeply concerned about the decisions the Department of Interior made, and along with the Department of Agriculture regarding mineral leasing on the Superior National Forest. It's within the watershed of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, the most heavily visited wilderness area in the system, in Voyageurs National Park. And people can, get into, well, it's not in the park or it's not in the Boundary Waters Wilderness Canoe Area, but it's in the middle of a body of water that both this area flows through and also flows north to our Canadian neighbor. And as you know, it's an area known for pristine waters and diverse wildlife, including several endangered species, which leads me back to the first part of the question that I asked you about the UN assessment about what are we going to do about sustaining native plants and I would say animals on public lands. The department's currently being sued for unlawful reinstating the Twin Metals mining leases in the watershed. They were denied under the last administration. In December, the Trump administration canceled a proposed mineral withdrawal in the area and abandoned a related environmental assessment. Secretary Perdue announced the cancellation, and the Department of Interior has also been active in participating in this withdrawal. So I asked you in March 1st in a letter to provide us with all the documents and communications regarding the decision to reinstate the expired Twin Metal leases, the decision to cancel the mineral withdrawal and environmental assessment, the decision to propose renewal of the Twin Metals leases, and any other pending or potential mineral actions on the Superior National Forest. So I want to know when you think the committee can expect to receive this documentation, because I really think it does go to the heart of protecting water, protecting native plants, and protecting some species in the area which are threatened and possibly endangered. We have been waiting, for example, also for Freedom of Information Act's requests have turned up in meetings and emails showing communications within the department, including with you personally about this issue. We have an email dated October 3rd, 2017 from a personnel and solicitor's office to you asking about briefing on Twin Metals withdrawal application. The list of attachments includes briefing papers on the withdrawal and something entitled the Draft Release Renewal Scenarios with Comment. So I'm wondering when we can expect, based on my March 1st request, this information to come to this committee so that we can take a look and find out how the discussion to overturn the Twin Metals leases came to be, and who was all involved in deciding to be part of a withdrawal.
So I fully appreciate and respect the request. It's sometimes challenging when we're in the middle of deliberation on what documents can come up and what can't, and that's no disrespect to the committee in any way, shape, or form. We met 2 days ago, I think. I went back and suggested that we need to take a hard look at what we could give you, so we can give you what we can now. My view is that the Assistant Secretary will make a decision. There's 2 different tiers of leases here that are involved. Both of them, if the applicant were to go forward, or the right holder, however you want to say it, there's lots of opportunity for comment review. There's no way that we're going to approve something that is destructive to the boundary waters. But there are processes we go through to analyze that. We can't approve a mine plan of operation that would cause jeopardy or adversely modify or destroy critical habitat. And all of those things will be looked at the appropriate time. So, I can commit to trying to get you the documents we can before decisions are made, and getting you the appropriate documents after decisions are made, and ultimately, working through the issue with you. This may be one that we see differently, but that doesn't mean for a moment that your folks don't have opportunities for comment, that there's not opportunities for judicial review. I appreciate all of that.
Well, thank you. I'll be following up, but this committee is finding whether it is getting lists from the Department on School Construction and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and other places, EPA, and that sometimes it takes a long time to get a letter answered, and sometimes it's not answered very satisfactorily or with information that we need to have in front of us in order to make our budget decisions. But, sir, we will continue the discussion later. Mr. Joyce.